Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the First Class, Second Place podcast. I'm your host, Jason Enrique, and no guest today. It's another Han Solo episode of me, yours truly, here. First and foremost, I want to say shout out to Bravery Studios. We are live at Garfield. We're live at Bravery Studios in Garfield, New Jersey. Excuse me, real quick. Shout out to Steve behind the glass, real quick. I'm actually enjoying these solo episodes. I gotta say that I really have to really thank a lot of people that have been really receptive to these episodes. Not just the ones with the guests and not the ones that I do solo, but just overall in general. It's still a little bit of a shock to me, a little bit of a surprise to me that I'm now at 124, 125 episodes now. Who would have thought that? Thank you very much, Steve. But yeah, no, here we are, especially with all the trials and tribulations that I've gone with on the show, from its infancy to the middle, and then elevating it, excommunicating some people, so on and so forth, and then also trying to gain the confidence in order to see if I can do this on my own. And I feel like I was able to do that. I think I was able to prove that to myself more than anybody. But it's all about, like, it's kind of like working out, you know. You just got to keep on doing it, and then afterwards you got to see the progress and so on and so forth. You got to keep on working on it. It's always going to be a process. You know, you can't just do it once or maybe another time and then you just never do it again. And then afterwards you think, oh, I got this. No, it's practice makes perfect. That's the old cliche saying, practice makes perfect. But yeah, no, it's also really good when it has to come up with these episodes when you got to be off the cuff, where I unfortunately I did have a guest. I had two guests actually on that were supposed to come on today, but unfortunately things happen, and you know, as the kids say, life be lifing. But you know what, that's fine. We can get him on another episode. The show's not going anywhere, so on and so forth. But yeah, no, I think it prepares me, and also maybe a lesson to anybody else that wants to do a podcast. Whenever things like this comes along, maybe this can help them get through that and show that this is actually something that they could do. And as far as like keeping the show going, another thing that I gotta be, I gotta celebrate my wins every now and then. I gotta be really proud about this podcast is, I was talking to Marv a couple of days ago. Shout out to Marv for Bravery Studios. I think he mentioned something along the lines of, usually for the majority in the general podcaster only lasts for about maybe like 3 months, 90 days. It's almost like a 3-month trial from Apple or something. And then afterwards, they never see it go anywhere, never generates anything. And then afterwards, it's bye-bye podcast. That's not why I got into it in the first place. I noticed that a lot of people got into this medium because it seems like everybody and their mother has a podcast nowadays, and they seem to get into it for the wrong reasons. I didn't get into it because, I mentioned this before on plenty of episodes before, where my situation wasn't like I saw somebody like a Joe Rogan or a Joe Budden doing a podcast, and then afterwards they make a whole lot of money. You see Joe Rogan get $100 million deal, Spotify deal, and then everybody and their mother wants to be like, oh, maybe this is the way to make money. Maybe this is how I'll be a podcaster. Maybe this is how I'll do it. But it never works out that way, and I feel like people tend to do it for the wrong reasons. And all I know is that my reasons are much different than anybody else. And that's just humbly speaking. That's not trying to be egotistical or cocky or anything like that. But one of the things that I did want to talk about really quickly is I was actually having dinner with a friend of mine the other day. And this is somebody that has been in my life for a number of years. And there's a spiritual connection between the two of us that I really trust their judgment and their words and everything that they say. And also, like, this is also a person that has actually saved my life before. I've mentioned before where there were times in my life where I wasn't feeling the greatest and I would think the worst about harming myself. And this is a person that has actually helped me get out of that. So I want to thank them very much for that. But the conversation that we had, which was an interesting conversation, was about accountability. So I feel like a lot of people, they tend to project this negative, narcissistic, manipulative energy out there now more than ever, because a big factor is that nobody wants to take accountability for their actions, or they'll, kind of do it half-assed. One of the things that I find that is really annoying and is also very fraudulent is when somebody apologizes, but they say, I mean everything that I said, just the way that I went about it was wrong and that wasn't cool, so I want to apologize for that. To me, that's a half-ass apology, because you actually feel the exact same way prior to the apology, but you just don't want to come off as the bad guy. I can't think of anything more narcissistic than that at this particular moment in time. But Yeah, that's it's it's all about taking accountability at the end of the day, because one of the things I know about taking accountability, and Lord knows that I've had struggles with this in the past before, where I used to blame the entire world for every other problem, every other thing that was going wrong in my life, and I would always try to say that I'm trying to get out of it. I don't know what to do. This is not my fault. How could this happen to me? This, that, and the third, and that is not a headspace that I wanted to be in any longer. And I had to grow and I had to get out of that. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't an easy transition. Taking accountability is easier than it seems, because you have to break off that wall. You have to break those barriers. You have to break those boundaries that allows you to, that is blocking the ability for you to take accountability. And it's a process, but that's the point, that it's always taking that first step. I always mention all the time in anything in life in general that whenever you want to do something, or you need to do something, or you want to work on something, it could be anything in the world. It could be your mental, it could be your physical, it could be your job, it could be anything out there in the world. Just think of the most generalistic thing that you could think of. It's always about taking that first step. Once you take that first step, you've already made the progress. Now it's just got to keep going. You got to keep working on it. And then you're not going to see the results right away. It's going to take some time. Some time is different than others depending on the person, but you just can't stop. But going back to accountability, it, taking accountability, it just seems that it is so hard for so many people to do, because they want to feel like they're justified in their actions. Um, they feel like in more cases than not, they feel like it's never really their fault. But they also have to think about what caused them to get in that position in the first place. And I know, like, looking back at that 20-year-old self of myself, where I could have pointed so many fingers at so many people, and it was so ridiculous. And I think the reason why I decided to learn to take accountability is because I feel like the negative energy that I was projecting on people by not being accountable for my actions, me being accountable for my actions, was causing me to alienate so many people, and people that you think would never leave your side, people that you think that would be through with you through thick and thin. But that's I think that was the hard lesson that I had to learn. I mentioned it plenty of times, where I'm the type of person that you got to hit me over the head with a brick in order for me to get some common sense. And I think I've been hit with plenty of bricks and every other hard objects that you could think of, pause, over my head, in order for me to get some common sense. But yeah, it was a long, tough, grueling road. Now, I'm not saying that I'm 100% there. I'm a human. Nobody's perfect. There's some things that I feel like I have to take accountability for going forward, and I always have to keep an open mind of that. But it really is a real thing. A real thing. Accountability is also something that is very respectable and very admirable. And you'd be surprised that once you grow and you evolve and you start taking accountability and you start to see the error of your ways, the amount of respect that you get from people and from your peers and so on and so forth is so great. And like, people love seeing growth within you, and who knows, in turn, that could actually motivate them to see the growth in themselves. And who knows, maybe it's also a cause and effect where, people will actually learn to take accountability once others do. And it's kind of like a chain reaction, and it shows that everybody can take accountability for their actions, whether positive or negative. But it's something that is a big part of my growth, and I hope that anybody else is watching can take into account about learning how to take accountability for your actions. It's such it's funny because we talk about it all the time, but I think it's something that doesn't get practiced enough with a lot of people out there, and that's why it feels like now more than ever, in this crazy world that we live in, that there's just an abundance of narcissistic energy that's out there. And I actually thought about this the other day, where it's like narcissism is kind of looked at as um a disorder, a mental disorder. I remember, listen, this is we are also the same species that we took a word, a medical term. Well, I'm not going to say right now because I don't want to get canceled and I don't want to get flagged or anything like that. But there was a medical term that us human beings we had took, and then we turned it into a negative connotation to disparage an entire group of people that are handicapped. and we made it worse. And now it's a word that we can't even use. It's considered a buzzword. And it kind of made me think about narcissism, the actual term of narcissism, because while we so quick to judge people and talk about how this person is bringing negative energy and being narcissistic and so on and so forth, there are a lot of people out there that are clinically diagnosed with this disorder. And the fact of the matter is that I think that instead of pointing fingers and judging for somebody that actually could possibly have this disorder, instead of just like chastising them and judging them and excommunicating them and making them feel terrible about themselves, maybe they need more help than we realize. Maybe they're the ones, but you know what? That goes to back to accountability. They have to take the step in order to progress themselves. If that includes getting the right help, professional help, whatever the case may be, that's what they have to do. So at the end of the day, it all ties into accountability. Taking accountability for your actions and for everything they do is part of growth and evolution, and it is so important. And it sounds so cliche and taboo at this point, or maybe it just seems like a broken record because everybody seems to be talking about it. But again, it's like the subject with mental health. I feel like people need to keep on talking about this kind of thing in order for it to for the message to keep being out there. We don't talk about it, if we don't discuss it, how are we going to know? How are we going to know if we can? How can we fix a problem if we don't know that there is a problem? That's why communication is such a big thing as well. But sticking on with accountability, I just wish that I'll just say this. I feel like if I was able to do it, and people know that I've been a pretty self-deprecating person for a long time. I use it as kind of like a defense mechanism or a sense of humor. But the fact of the matter is that it's all about power of words. And I learned that I need to do a better job of not making that a thing and making sure that I don't put those words into manifestation, because apparently that's a big thing nowadays, especially with everything that we're learning now as we're growing as humans and evolution and so on and so forth. But that's also another step of me taking accountability, checking, putting my flaws into check and realize what I have to do and how to better myself. So it's possible. It's definitely possible. It's easier said than done, but it's not impossible. It's difficult. It's going to take time. It's going to take progress. But I'm just here to tell you guys that all it takes is just that first step. And that first step is all you need to do in order to keep progressing and keep going forward and so on and so forth. But yeah, I wanted to keep this episode a little bit short and sweet. Like I said, there was no guest today, but I noticed that people have been really enjoying these shows, these episodes, these solo episodes, and doing these little tidbits here and there. But yeah, I really enjoy talking to the audience. I enjoy really giving the audience a piece of myself. And we're going to come up with more new episodes, coming up with more segments, more guests coming soon. And we will catch you next time. Before we go, though, you can find me at Jason Enrique. No, I am Jason Enrique. See, I still got to get that correctly. I got to keep on working on it. I got to step on my social media game. But yeah, I am Jason Enrique on all social media platforms. Don't forget to like, subscribe on YouTube at Jason Enrique. This is First Class, Second Place podcast.